translational applications. He has a bachelor's degree in genetic engineering and a master's degree in bioengineering from Korea University, as well as a PhD in food technology from Clemson University. His doctoral dissertation on gelatin nanoclay composite materials have been published in several major scientific journals, and he holds an international patent from the World Intellectual Property Organization. He has extensive expertise in natural polymers. He focuses on developing controlled micro and nano architectures for engineered tissues, aiming to guide tissue morphogenesis and cell behavior in tissue engineering applications. His extensive knowledge of biopolymer-based hydrogels has led him to explore his interdisciplinary applications and modifications of these materials. He's committed to translating his research findings into commercially viable products. One major example is his recent work on centimeter scale 3D printed hydrogel constructs for tissue engineering. He has demonstrated the potential for producing steak-type cultured meat. Professor Bay has edited multiple books and journal special issues. He's an author of over 100 peer-reviewed journal papers, editorials, and review papers, as well as more than 20 book chapters, edited books, and more than 20 patent disclosure applications. His work has been published in leading journals and routinely highlighted in international media. He has been cited more than 14,000 times and has an H-index of 50. The floor is yours, Professor Bay.
Thank you very much, Mehmet. So I'm very delighted to see you all, although it's online. And thank you for making this time for me to present today. And title for my talk today is Global Trends in Cell-Cultivated Meat Production Research. I know Professor Kader Mohseni runs a company called OMeat, which is also directly related to cell-cultivated meat production and also related research. And so I assume that some of you are actually great experts in the field as well. Some of you may be not, but I hope that you find this info from my slides very helpful today. So I'll start with the introduction, and from the introduction, I would like to start with the nomenclature part first. So if you go on a Google and research regarding the cultivated meat process, these four are the most searched words on Google search engine, which are lab-grown meat, cultured meat, clean meat, and cell-cultivated meat. So in the beginning of the field, people started calling a lab-grown meat, but that sort of gave the impression of being unnatural food, and it also has very scientific aspect, and gave the idea of being artificial. So people have started to call a cultured meat to emphasize that it is slaughter-free, and emphasize the sanitation and environmental impact aspect. And also there was this other term called clean meat to emphasize that it is zoonotic disease-free and antibiotic resistance-free. So there's been a lot of debate over what it should be called exactly. But starting last month, which is 8th of June, USDA actually approved, or I guess decided on, the final official termination of this specific type of meat. So they have decided to call this cell-cultivated meat. So there's been a lot of debate regarding whether if they should include the word meat or not, but they have finally decided to include that word. So this term is actually the official form, I would say, which is the cell-cultivated meat. So we actually at least have the nomenclature part sorted out. So a couple of years ago, Professor Mark Post from the Netherlands, he made a cell-cultured hamburger patty and showed that cultured meat production is possible. And although it was worth about, I would say, it was probably about $300,000 or so for a hamburger patty. But ever since, lots of effort has been made to use what was technologies to build on engineered tissues for medical purpose into affordable, edible food application technologies. And among different biofabrication techniques that are available, 3D bioprinting is actually one that is being utilized to build a sizable cultured meat in scalable manner, along with the materials to build proper scaffold structures. So this is one of the examples that you could find, which is the production of tissue-like structure, meat tissue, which has muscle fibers, blood vessel fibers, fat fibers, and by using 3D printings, people have shown that it is actually possible to control the ratio of these essential components of the meat. So based on several benefits of this alternative protein source, protein choice, which is being alternative method that can provide protein as in the form of meat. And also regarding the production process, it has possibility of becoming highly environmentally friendly, which is directly related to overall animal welfare. So this field has attracted many research groups around the world within the last couple of years. As you can see, number of publication is increasing in a very fast manner. So you have seen like dramatic increase in publication number. Also, as a consequence, number of related companies are also have increased dramatically. And also this also means that overall increase in funding is actually increasing at the same time. And it is expected that this trend will grow faster this year as well. So we will see the further expand in the related industry, at least for, I don't know, a couple of years or probably a decade or so. So these are some of the examples of cell-cultivated meat prototypes that have been produced using 3D printing platform. For example, Left Farms is one of the earliest companies that have optimized bioprinting process to mass produce 3D printed cell-cultivated meat. Blue Nalu aimed for producing cultured seafood by using cells extracted from tuna, for example. They also have shown great success in producing 3D printed prototypes. Good Food Institute, they actually acquired FDA and USDA approval recently. They have been working with cells from the chicken embryo, which provides excellent efficiency in terms of mass production. Also Stakeholder, they have developed their own printing platform that uses a layer by layer approach to create a tissue-like structure. And one of the recent interesting, I think, addition to the 3D printed meat production is that now they're trying to culture fat tissues instead of muscle tissues. And Mission Barnes is actually one of the leading companies in doing so. And this cell-based animal fat actually makes sense in terms of providing a fat taste into one of those already available plant-based meat analogs. And by saying that, there's another interesting aspect along with cultured fat is the emergence of the hybrid type meat. So much like the cars we drive nowadays, this is a type of meat, type of alternative protein product that can be categorized as hybrid meat, which is being introduced and getting actually quite a lot of attention recently. So what it is that it's basically the combination of the cells, cultivated cells that have been cultured, plus the plant-based meat analog that's already available out in the market. And result, I heard is rather pretty impressive regarding the ability of resembling the conventional meat product, especially the resembling the fattiness of the conventional meat product. So this introduction of cell-based animal fat is known to provide enhanced flavor for these plant-based product. So there are some of the things that you may be able to find in the market in the near future. And in relations to the fat flavor, also alternative meat market, the flavor market is also increasing demand for these plant-based meat analogs as well. For instance, cysteine amino acid, which is responsible for the meat taste. Different companies that have their own bioprocessing facilities, they now focus on producing one of those key components that is responsible for the meat flavor. So that's another a field that is growing rapidly recently. And in continuation regarding the animal fat alternatives, besides those cell-cultivated animal fat, there have been alternative attempts. For example, no palm ingredients, they use genetically modified fermentation systems to produce palm oil. And this cubic foods, they have their own technologies to build brick type of fats for mass production process. Also, Ferntech, they actually use upcycle sources, such like the fruit seeds to extract oils from those sources. And another company called Lipid, they haven't shown their exact process, but they somehow produce synthetic vegan-friendly fat for the mass production process. So these are some of the recent trends in relations to the cell-cultivated meat production business that are actually starting to get more attention. So starting about like 2015, when there were only like 5 to 6 startup companies related to cell-cultivated meat industry, now have expanded in number of companies. And also this trend is actually now have become worldwide. For example, even in Korea now, which I live in now, there are up to like 40 companies that is related to the cell-cultivated meat production process. And this will continue on for the next couple of years. And also these companies have their own specialized parts and very specific parts in the industry as well. And capital investment of the industry, as you already know, is increasing a great deal. It has increased a great deal in the last couple of years and will continue in the future as well. So more money means that it will be attracting more number of researchers, which will bring dramatic advancements in the field, probably. And towards the end of my slide, I would like to discuss some of the technical aspects of the cell-cultivated meat production. So this is a schematic showing some of the key steps in producing cell-cultivated meat. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with this process. And there are several key steps when producing cultured meat, and the whole process is pretty similar in the case of engineered tissues for medical purpose. But the ultimate goal would be slightly different. But similarly, establishing a cell line, proliferating and differentiating into proper cell source, and then having them attach and let them grow using the different scaffold technology and have them mature in bioreactor. These four, I would say, is the major steps in producing cultured meat. So for instance, different companies have tried different cell sources, especially for acquiring a fully differentiated muscle tissue. And this, well, until now, there was actually a major debate over whether if you should be using genetically modified cells or not in the case of producing a muscle tissue. And I myself, I used like myosatellite cells isolated from cows, chicken, pig. Also tried embryonic stem cells or other sources such as induced pluripotent stem cells. Well, the process could be optimized for the specific cell source. And it was possible to build a tissue-like structure with proper muscle functionality. But the bottom line difficulty was that it took so much effort and a resource that it seems almost impossible to produce a meat in proper size with very low cost, meaning that by saying low cost is actually a cost that would be comparable to any conventional meat that you are able to purchase in the market, because we're not dealing with engineered tissues for medical purpose. We're actually dealing with a food products. So that was like the major hurdle, even for me as well. But recently, FDA has revealed the whole documentation regarding the approval with the upside foods. And I was actually happy to see that FDA actually did not claim any problem regarding the use of genetically modified cell source when it comes to producing a muscle tissue. So that sort of paved the way for the related industry. So now people are not too concerned with producing a proper cell line source for building a muscle tissue. And that also sort of paved the way for producing proper media formulation as well. As you may know, different companies, they all have developed their own media formulation, which is very specific for the specific cell lines they use. Although these formulations, they're not available online or have not patented. I think these companies, they rather keep the formulation as their know-how instead of uh, revealing their whole formulation. But seems like serum-free medium formulations have been developed according to the specific cell source that these companies use. So, for example, Upside Foods, I know that they have built their own formulation of culture media derived from a combination of different growth factors, which was actually a major concern in getting approval from FDA, but that doesn't seem like the problem at all, as long as there's no remnants of growth factor remain at the at the at the time of final product. Other companies, Heroes, Mosami, they are actually the ones that have worked a lot in producing this FVS-free media. And there are other companies from Japan. Also, there are several companies from Korea. They built their own formulation of serum-free media. And I tried a couple of these, and they all seem to work well, but looks like these formulations are very cell-specific for the established cell lines from these each companies. And another aspect is the scaffold. I know Professor Kato-Mosini's lab actually specializes in various innovations in the field. So there are several different manufacturing methods that are available, known to be suitable for producing scaffolds for cell-cultivated meat applications. And each method has its own advantage and disadvantage, which actually all depend on the exact type of material that will be used. Or there also may be a cell compatibility issue, as different cells show different behavior according to different process. But above all, specific manufacturing process is chosen, whichever method that will provide the result that resembles the real muscle tissue, such as nutrition, appearance, texture, and flavor are some of those major categories. So these are some of the representative works from the groups around the world regarding cell-cultivated meat production. And as you can see, each group, they introduce sort of different approaches in terms of achieving maximized cell viability and cell functionality. For instance, on the top left, this is work from Kit Parker's lab from Harvard University. They have adapted this well-known spinning process from food industry to mass produce aligned muscle tissue. The advantage is that you can actually create fiber like a scaffold in very price competitive way. Lead forms, they have been using soy-based material to create scaffolds for the creation of state-like structure. So they have been working on this for a long time. And there's these recent works from Japan. They actually built cell-cultivated meat-specific 3D printing platform, and they all provided excellent ability in generating meat-like tissue, and also like these works from, this is one of the recent work from my group where we adapted like DLP printing process for the creation of a centimeter scale tissue. Also, this work from the National University of Singapore, they actually used extrusion type printing to mass produce a tissue-like structure. So all these methods, they actually focused on creating a maximized cell viability with like lowest cost possible. So regulatory policy of cultivated meat, as you know, upside food and goat meat recently received FDA clearance. And also in the case of goat meat, they recently received USDA clearance as well. So I would say you could actually expect to see these out in the market pretty soon. But the thing is, the reality is that although the speed of technological advance and as well as these regulatory policy is the whole pace is very fast, but still these cultivated meat is rather very expensive compared to the conventional meat that we are able to purchase on a daily basis. So to bring the cost down, aside from the quality, to bring the cost to affordable level, there are still many aspects that should be considered and researched in terms of bringing the quality and the price competitiveness at the same time. So that's I see the most important aspect of the cell cultivated meat. And following United States, different countries they are actually building their own policies regarding this newly emerging cell cultivated meat product. But they're all actually under novel food category, and they are different companies, different countries that are building like fast track policy so that they don't actually inhibit any developments in these novel food categories. So to conclude my talk, I think it's a very interesting field, very interesting to work as a researcher as well. And as I've been working in producing scaffolds for tissue engineering applications, and there are lots of similarities between tissue engineering and this cell cultivated meat industry. But the thing is, one is actually for regenerative purpose, and another is for mass produced food purpose. So bottom line, cell cultivated meat cannot be free from being from the price issue. So that would be the major hurdle to work on for many companies that are out there. Also, safety and regulation issue. I know that government officials are actually working in lots of different aspects to actually perfect the issue. So I'm not too concerned about those regulations, and technology is already there, I guess. It's all about the money and optimizing the process for the higher quality and the price issue. So we will probably see these products out in the market pretty soon. And I would say, but it will take some time, at least couple of years, to become these products to very competitive in the market. So this is actually, I would say, this is actually a slide from Professor Kato Moseni's presentation. I've been seeing this slide since when I was in Boston, actually. And usually he would describe this slide as being all these micro and nanoscale technologies people have thought that regenerative medicine purpose was like the end point of those technologies, but along the way, people saw great potential in biological studies, disease models, biosensing, biorobotics. But also, Professor Carter-Manson usually mentions the potential in building food supply by using those technologies. And this slide is actually from like back in 2012 when I was back in Boston. So I think I actually, being the member of the lab, I always took pride in the fact that we are actually the group that actually innovates the related field, and we are regarded as sort of like the innovators in the field. And I believe it's the exact same way in Terasaki Institute as well. So I hope the best for everyone for your research and career. And thank you for hearing my talk today. Thank you.
Dear Professor Hojae, excellent talk. Fully appreciated for your time, and the time was late over there. So one question came in from social media: is such approach cost effective in large scale?
So may I ask which particular approach?
He was on your second or third slide. You were showing cultivated meat. You go to your
Is that somewhere
3D
here?
printed cultivated meat.
Yeah, 3D printed, like for example, like Good Food Institute, they
Maybe
can
slide 4. Go to slide 4.
slide 4.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he asked the question at that time.
Oh, this one, it's not price competitive at all, actually, but it's a good method of producing meat structure with combination of fat fibers, blood vessel fibers, and muscle fibers. But so this particular cube was made by using embedded printing process, which is rather slow in terms of mass production. So for this particular purpose, no. But these products, they actually have their own mass production way of producing these 3D printed foods. So for these types, yes.
Thank you. A couple other questions. Why now? I think Mark Post published this, the burger a while back, but all of a sudden, you show the data, last 4 or 5 years is an overgrowth of this lab cultured meat. Why now? What is the driving force? Is there a big innovation or global warming, or what are these drivers?
I would say the major driving force is the capital investment in the field. So money, like big chunk of money is brought in the related field. So as soon as the money is in there, then we need people to work on it. But before that, there's all these, good reasons why these products should be researched. For example, like it's eco-friendly, it has advantage in animal welfare, all that blah blah advantages. But overall, I think companies saw a great potential in making money in the field. So lots of money is being invested in the field. And I would say that's the major driving force for sudden increase in publication and number of companies and all that.
Thank you. One of the problems in scaling is you need lots of cells, similar to regenerative medicine, billions and maybe billions.
Yes.
Primary cells do not grow so much. So how do people get around that problem? Because they take cells from the cow, which I believe are primary cells, and then how do they go to billions and billions of cells?
Okay, so this particular question is actually in the documents from FDA, which in relations to approval with upside foods. So they use cell sources from, or they use two different cell sources. I myself do the same thing as well. So in the case of cow, we actually isolate cells from the cow embryo, and from the cells, we actually select self-immortalized cell from the primary culture. So there is actually a small population of cells that behaves like immortalized cells. So these are not genetically modified, but these are, we call it self-immortalized cells. So they don't grow like other like immortalized cancer cells, but at least they would grow well until like passage, I don't know, 80, 90, it depends on cell types. But so that's one cell source that also these companies use. But the problem was the differentiation part. As soon as cell differentiates, they don't actually proliferate anymore. And the cost of money that is required for the whole differentiation process is so dramatic that it is almost impossible to meet the competitive cost for the end product. So that's why these companies, they actually took the genetically modification way of creating myosatellite cells or fully differentiated muscle cells. And I actually could not find other better way of doing so as well. I think US is more open to these genetically modified organisms, where in Korea where I work, when people hear about genetic modification, they just freak out. So that's something to work on in the future.
Yeah. Other questions came in. Since most people use meat in combination with other food items and cook them in high temperature, what is the behavior of lab meat in these conditions?
I would say they behave pretty similar to conventional meat. I would say. They're to my knowledge or to my experience, they're like after cooking, like grilling, I tried steaming, also pan frying, and it seemed pretty similar in terms of texture. Well, taste is slightly different because it doesn't contain all those blood components and ligaments or all that, but at least like basically basic texture point of view, I would say they're pretty similar.
Thank you. There are many companies which are using iPSC-based cells for lab meat production. How good this process is from regulatory approval point of view?
So these, FDA actually approved the genetically modified version of the cells as long as the genes that have been used, the genes that have been incorporated into these cells are actually from legitimate source. But basically the using genetically modified cells actually solves out all these cost issue in differentiating into fully functional muscle tissue. So that's a major issue actually. But these genetically modified cell induced pluripotent cells, they because these companies that use IPS for this particular purpose, they actually do gene modification actually, because there's actually no way of fully differentiating these cells into muscle cells without putting lots of cost in it. So, but in terms of the result is very good.
Thank you. How about the gene expression difference between the cultured meat and natural meat? What kinds of cells are included in cultivated meat? Are they similar to the primary cell types of natural meat?
So gene analysis, they have already proven that the gene analysis is like 99.9% similar to conventional meat. And the taste issue, like different companies have different way of producing. So like, for example, Good Meat Institute, I know that they mix these cells with extrusion-based plant material sort, like plant material based meat analogs. But I tasted those as well. I was not able to differentiate those between like conventional chicken breast products. I haven't tried upside product from Upside Foods, but I heard that they taste pretty similar to the conventional meat product. So the technology is pretty advanced in terms of providing good texture and in terms of nutritional value. I heard that like the data, I've seen the data, and they're all like pretty similar to conventional meat. It's so the basically it's actually the cost that these companies are actually working on.
What should be the cell density of final cultivated meat?
Cell density. Mm, out of the top of my head, I don't actually have the exact number. I know like students from my lab, they actually have calculated all these densities, but like I mentioned, like according in terms of like the prototypes that have been made by these one of the major companies, Good Food Institute, they actually mix cells, cultivated cells with soy-based plant meat analog. I heard that their cell to soy ratio was like up to 70 and 80%. So 80% up to 80% cells and other 20% soy-based material. So that's sort of like a, so I'll say like cell density would be quite high, but honestly, I don't actually have the exact number right now.
Thank you. What is the impact of different cells on taste?
Oh, different cells and taste. Well, like people have tried like incorporating different ingredients into cells as well, like by utilizing these cells as also a vehicles for transporting or having like pairing all these different ingredients. So it depends on like what type of ingredients that were included in the media in the process of cell culture process. But different cells, to my experience, cells from chicken and cells from bovine or porcine, I was not able to actually differentiate the taste between these two different cell sources. I think taste actually depends more on the type of media that you use for during the culture, because if you add like different components in the media, that actually gets incorporated, like not all of them, but like but some of the ingredients actually gets incorporated into cells, and that actually has impact on the overall taste for the final product.
Interesting. Can immortalized cell lines be differentiated?
Yes. So technologies are available to do that. It just it's actually the matter of whether if the method you took is able to get approval from the FDA and USDA or not. So that's the only issue.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the great talk. Do you think there are going to be any challenges going forward for cultivated meat as far as customer adoption is concerned? If so, what do you think could be done to promote wider adoption of cultivated meat into our daily lives?
Okay, so this is actually, I don't actually mention in my talk, but this is actually one of the recent data regarding the taste of cultured versus conventional beef burger. And as you can see from the graph, in the case of meat eaters, they didn't actually like the cultivated like version at all. They thought it was really disgusting overall. and they didn't like the pleasantness, fullness, and they were not satisfied at all. But in terms of non-meat eaters, they thought the conventional meat was more disgusting than these cell-cultivated version. So I guess it is known that about 12% of the whole world population is actually non-meat eaters. So 12% may not be very large in terms of number, but if you count the exact population, it's quite a large number of population. And among these populations, there's actually a great deal of data that people from these non-meat eater category are actually willing to try these alternative version of meat products. So I think for now, companies should actually focus on these particular populations and try to promote or advance these products in terms of to have more advantage over conventional meat products. But there are lots of things to work on.
Well, thank you so much. You got the most number of questions, Hojae. It was very interesting talk. We learned a lot. Appreciate your time.
Sure. Thank you, Minute.
Have a nice day.
Sure.